back here 4 years later from my first podcast regarding the situation with Nicola Sturgeon. Let me just get this a wee bit lower. See, this is the problem when you're your own cameraman. So, I was here 4 years ago, I don't know if it's to the day, but certainly 4 years ago, to discuss Nicola Sturgeon and her, let me just try and get this in a better angle here, and discuss her gerrymandering the political process to prevent her being sacked, which I said she should have been. Not that all other trials and tribulations that have come out subsequently have not added to the fact that I was correct all the way back then. The missing money, the do not resuscitate orders, the Hamilton report that's still been redacted. And that I wasn't correct away back then, which we all know I was. But recently in the Express, we have got the fact that the Hamilton report, which I thought was going to be published unredacted last year in August. So 2024, August 2024, October 2024, was going to be published unredacted by the Irish Judge Hamilton, who did the initial report, who said that the unredacted, they shouldn't have been able to redact it anyway. That's the failure of this Parliament for checks and balances against the executive. That's a failure by Westminster under the Scotland Act, who set up this Parliament. So it's a failure in legislation to have checks and balances on the executive. But the Irish Judge Hamilton said that this should be unredacted last year. It's a bit after the fact getting it unredacted last year, isn't it? This should have been unredacted 4 years ago when I was standing here telling you that she should have resigned 4 years ago. And that she had to heavily redact the Hamilton judge's report to prevent her being sacked away back then. And we were on the money again, telling you exactly what should have happened. The most watched video I've had, most likes, and Nicola Sturgeon should have been brought down then, and there might have been other ramifications on the back of that had the executive not been able to heavily redact the documentation for the judge's report, and for her to cover up her sneaky abuse of power, which I said at the time. And they were able to redact it now in 2025, many years later. They are still trying to obstruct the unredacted Hamilton's report so that the populace cannot get to see it. So the people who were investigated got the Judge Hamilton to come in and say that there was no problem. Then the judge might well have done a good job, we don't know, because what they did, even on the back of that, they started to redact, to put actual black marker through the judge's report and prevent the populace or the voters actually finding out what had actually happened. And I told you 4 years ago that she should have had to resign at that point. I was that close to taking down the First Minister. And other things would not have happened on the back of that. But obviously the corruption, the camper van, the 600,000 missing, the do not resuscitate orders, I'll come on to some of that in a minute. But the Hamilton report was the initial problem. We had identified it, and we had spoken with regards to what should have happened to her, and she should have resigned at that point. She did break the ministerial code. The fact that the judge said she didn't was just a cover-up. That was a cover-up. The fact that the SNP were appointing their own judiciary to actually say, oh no, she didn't do nothing. Didn't do nothing. and taking the piss out of the voting public. Taking the piss out of the voting public. She was not held accountable. The SNP were able to redact the judge's report after me standing in this exact spot and telling you that she broke the ministerial code and she should have resigned away back then. And I told you that. I had already told you that we were correct. And the reason we know we're correct is they're still trying to redact it today. There was an article, go on Google, there's an article in the Express saying that the Hamilton report was redacted. The Hamilton report has been covered up by by the SNP, and they're going to court to make sure the unredacted Hamilton report does not come out. So why are they covering it up? It's 5 years later. What have they got to hide? They've got to hide the fact that we were correct, the Guerilla TV channel were correct, and the redactions by the SNP were a deliberate attempt to manipulate voters' understanding of what actually was happening at that time. And they're still going to court to try and prevent the public, by using your money, to prevent you from actually seeing what was in the unredacted report. What Judge Hamilton should have done was just to release the unredacted report. He should have just released it. And we should have actually been able to see it. The fact that the political party, there's no checks and balances here. The political party that's been investigated nominates a judge. The judge then gives the report back to the investigated political party. They heavily redact and say, oh, there's no problem here. Where's the checks and balances on that? Where's the checks and balances from that point of view? So the judge that's nominated by the people who are being investigated, every corrupt politician, criminal, everybody would like to do that. I want to pick my own judge. And then when you give me the report, I'm going to change it to make sure I don't look guilty. And then on the back of that, I'll release it to the public so I don't look guilty. And that is a good supposition of jurisprudence. I mean, really, you couldn't write it. So, as I said, the report has gone in to... the report has been blocked by the SNP, who are now putting in for some sort of judicial review where they can continue to have the redacted parts not available to the public. I mean, you couldn't write it. You couldn't write it. Watch for the next one. We're going to talk about what's happening with the trials or the convictions for Salmond, and what actually happened for Alex Salmond, and what's happening with the SNP there. My baby gorillas.